Hello and welcome. My name is Luana. I'm the founder of the Business School for Coaches, Therapists and Holistic Healers. And I'm talking to Michael Meredith. Michael is a physiologist, a healer and a life skills coach. And he's based in East Anglia and he practices throughout the UK and overseas. And today we're going to be discussing 3 common situations that come to us all sooner or later: yearning, longing, unrequited love. And he's going to explain to us what we can do to transform those into feelings of healing and fulfillment. So, hello, Michael. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Lorna. Yes, good to speak with you.
Yes, you too. So, Michael, would you like to begin by talking about why and how these feelings come about?
Yeah, well, they begin just as our natural, healthy human desires to fulfill our life, to feel fully alive. And to create a meaningful life story. So we're going to have desires and aspirations, and it's just a very natural part of our biology, of course. But of course, sometimes these things can run aground, we can get stuck, and we can run off course, and we can get into very self-tortured situations with our desires and our aspirations.
What do you think would be some of the reasons that these desires tend to go wrong and catch us off balance?
Well, they can go wrong. They can be kind of strangled at birth, if I could use that expression, in that we might be afraid of failure, so we never push ahead with our dreams and our hopes and ambitions. We might decide that we prefer to just dream about how our life might be, and that dream can be very perfect and very beautiful, and bringing it to the real world, of course, we know that it's not going to be perfect. There'll be setbacks, challenges, and so some of us will get stuck in just dreaming and hoping rather than risking putting a foot on the ground and moving things forwards. And we may be unwilling to make the investment that's always required. In any creative process, we've got to invest our time, our effort, maybe our money, get training, all those kind of things. And just having this pure wistful kind of dream can be one of the ways that we can get quite stuck, of course. The second kind of way we can get stuck right at the beginning is in ungroundedness, really. We can get involved in fantasizing about where we want to go or how our life might be in some area, whether it's in our work or whether it's in our home life, our relationships, our health, etc. Because sometimes dreams and aspirations are about something new. Sometimes they're about getting out of an uncomfortable place we find ourselves in at the moment, of course. So we've got to get these feet on the ground, and too much daydreaming, too much obsessing can get in the way of that. We've got to be prepared to make those practical steps and risk things kind of going aground. Third way that we might get stuck in the early stages is that we might fall into bad influences. We might fall into people who will exploit our dreams and our hopes, and we hear stories about this all the time. We can be so focused on a particular ambition that we're not being wary of the people who come along and offer us, I'll help you to make things come true. Just give me £1,000 and I'll open all the doors for you. This kind of stuff, there's all kinds of grooming and exploitation and marketing manipulations we can be vulnerable to, and that can cause us to crash at an early stage. And then, of course, once we get our dream, our longing and yearning, get it rolling forwards, then there'll be, of course, the setbacks and the failures. The bread and butter work for you and I, actually, along the road of success. There's always going to be some knocks, really, and we'll be able to pick ourselves up and carry on. And there's been interesting research, I think, in the field of success research, where people have looked at people who give up or regard themselves as losers in life, and then compare them with the people who are successful. And the success people fail more times than the losers or the quitters. But they have this ability to pick themselves up, learn from their experience, and carry on forward. So they actually fail more. So failure is part of the creative process, as we both know.
Yes. Well, funny, one of the first books that I remember reading a very long time ago was a book by Dr. Irene Casorla. And I think it was called Go For It. And she compared winners and losers and the different mindsets. And exactly what you're saying, it was unrealistic expectations, thinking that the minute a problem was hit, that meant the end of the dream, not being able to bounce back, not being able to look at it objectively, and being willing to take the hits, because there's always that feeling that maybe you're judged. It could be people around you. Well, somebody will say, well, I didn't think that was going to work, and maybe having to lower your expectations in some areas for a period of time. So all of those things. And I very much believe in the daydreaming part of the process. Very necessary to get the vision, but has to be balanced with practical, get it done steps. And that is exactly what you say. That's the rocky part.
The dream can be seductive. And I think it's very important to distinguish between dreams and fantasies. Fantasies where everything is going to be perfect and everything's going to be nice, but a dream will take into account that there will be a bit of a downside, there will be some costs involved, maybe letting go of some things we have already in order to have to be in the future.
Do you think as well, your thoughts on the beginner's mind, where even though it is that we are, like, especially when you're of a certain age and you've been successful somewhere else, that the whole thing of being a beginner again, we don't like that very much. I'll speak for myself. I don't like that very much. You think that you should know more, should be quicker and expect more because you've already achieved in a certain area.
Yeah, beating ourselves up is always one of the ways that we can come unstuck. But I think also, yes, I suppose that old proverb, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and all that kind of negative thinking. So it's very easy to get into that mindset of, I'm too old, what people say to us, oh, at your time of life, you're really going to do something new, But I mean, I'm 70 years old now, and I'm constantly doing new things, getting into new areas, and I can't imagine ever getting stuck in a rut. It's just not a nice place to be for me.
It's a total waste. I think somebody referred to this age as the wisdom years. I like that. It was a nice slant.
But life is a playground, and
yes,
why should we give up playing, really?
Exactly. Okay. So how does it affect us, would you say, when we're unable to satisfy such powerful desires?
Yeah, so longing and yearning, ambition, they certainly have a huge energy to them. And we come up against the first law of thermodynamics, what's often called the conservation of energy law. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can be moved from one place to another, or it can be changed, like when ice changes to water. But basically, you can't just eradicate energy. So the energy of our drive, if we're coming along and we hit a brick wall, that energy has to go somewhere. And it may come back on ourselves, so we may start to beat ourselves up. That drive forward, the energy comes back on us. Or it may splatter out and we start to get involved in blaming and attacking other people and so on. And at this point, if it's a very powerful ambition, a powerful drive that we have, then that positive energy is going to get transformed into more negative energies, what we call the toxic energies, the potentially destructive energies. And these are they're very natural energies driven by our DNA, powerful energies concerned with our survival, really, because we become very attached to where we're going, our goal, our destination. And when it's suddenly not there, we are floundering and we can be very lost. And so these toxic emotions come into play. So like disappointment, bitterness, resentment. We can start to get involved in being very envious, jealous of other people who are successful. We can even go down the road of undermining them all this kind of stuff, which doesn't serve us well in the long term. So yeah, rage, hatred, all forms of frustration can be a bit of a problem. I'm afraid there's someone at the door, and I'll have to just put it for a moment. We can find ourselves very anxious because our heart and soul, and sometimes our identity, is in these yearnings and longings for fulfillment. So when they disappear, we can be very disorientated, and it can throw us back on earlier experiences in our life and bring up bad memories of failure in the past. So yeah, anxiety and panic attacks, these kind of things can happen. And shame and guilt and all these kind of toxic emotions can be a bit of a problem. But it's not just an emotional situation because of the investment of our heart and soul, which goes on in these powerful drives. There is what I would call a life force effect, not just emotions that are generated when we hit the buffers, but also what I would call dark spiritual energies or distortions of our normally positively vibrant life force. So we get these dark spiritual experiences, self-attack and blaming, I've mentioned already, blaming other people, obsession, inner emptiness. Can you think, you know, my dream isn't happening, it leaves this empty space inside because we've invested some of ourselves in moving things forwards and we've lost that investment really. And it can happen in relationships as well. So we talked about unrequited love. So we've invested part of ourselves in that relationship, and suddenly the love is not being returned, we're being rejected. And so we may have felt occasionally there was an opportunity there, all of a sudden there's rejection or hostility. And so this can lead to all these kind of negative spiritual results. It can result in cravings and addictions as we try to fill this inner emptiness with something else. And because our whole attitude now has changed from positives, flipped over from positive to negative, then we'll get involved in things which don't really help us. We'll feel hostility and aggression, negative spiritual experiences, resignation, even at worst what I would call soul loss. So these kind of effects on our spirit, on our life force, can be just as devastating as the pure emotions can be.
That a lot of what you described there is akin to the path into depression, isn't it? And the loss of the dream, it can also be the loss of a job, the loss of a person, as you say. So it's really dealing with loss, being able to pivot from that or to find some light within that and to see that all is not lost, to take what good there was from that and use that to build stepping stones, would you say, to the next destination or to another point?
Yes, there's a journey of grief to be done because we're aware that if we lose a real person from our life or we lose our job, something like that, then we're aware that there's a sense of loss. But a dream is a living thing, a dream, an ambition. It's a living thing, and when it dies, then there is a sense of death, really, and there's a grieving journey to be done. And so working through the toxic emotions, the dark spiritual side, what can be at worst the dark night of the soul. But also the third thing, so we get toxic emotions, we get the dark spiritual effects on ourselves. But thirdly, we get the toxic behaviours, really. And so self-destructive or destructive of other people. And we can find ourselves behaving in ways which betray our personal values, our personal sense of worth. So we can start to become very bullying to other people. And we see this all the time in the workplace or in the home, where we have the dream of a nice home, for example, and a child spills something carelessly over the new carpet, that kind of thing. And this can bring out the worst in us. we have this aspiration that we're going to be financially successful in the workplace, for example, and somebody seems to be obstructing that, and we can go into harassment, bullying, manipulation, over-controlling. We can just be overdriven, just over-forceful to the people around us, to the extent that it damages our own health and well-being and those around us, really.
Yes, indeed. Sorry, I was going to say, with the addiction side of it, there was someone again that I read or followed quite recently online, followed in the nicest possible way, not the stalking kind of way. And he was saying that he was an addict himself. And he said that for him, the opposite of addiction is connection. Yeah. And he was himself trying to help others because he's now through it, but was saying that all of the bad behavior, all of the things you just mentioned, were because he was desperately trying to fill a hole that was left from youth.
And we lose awareness because we're so focused on this goal that we start to become increasingly oblivious. And the more we don't find the way forwards, and we kind of intense. It's just human nature. If you're not succeeding, try harder, and our concentration is getting more narrow, and so we're losing balance in our life and sensitivity to other people, and all erodes the ultimate possibility of success.
Yeah, and there was something else you mentioned with resignation, the giving up.
Yeah, the giving up and the quitting, and unfortunately, we see this quite a lot in older people. As you mentioned already, they give up trying new things because they've had some bad experiences, perhaps. And so we can quit on ourselves, quit on fulfilling our potential. We can quit on life. So life is not for me. Success is not for me, it's for other people. Yeah. And it's so sad and tragic. And both of us, I'm sure, have come across clients who've reached this awful place of a kind of deadness, just being half alive, really, because they've shut down on their dreams and hopes after having a bad time in pushing them forwards.
I've heard it described as goal trauma, where it's a lady who does EFT, emotional freedom tapping. Yes. And I thought that was a good description because she said it comes from having tried something, invested, as you say, so much into it, and had it go very badly wrong, and then thinking that is an indication of how things are going to be, and finding it difficult to actually learn from it. What they rather do is protect themselves from it ever happening again. So again, it's a process to kind of get through, take the learning from it, and move forward.
It's part of this process whereby our drive forwards hits the buffers, and then it can turn back on ourselves. It can go in different ways. It can splatter out in toxic emotions, but it can turn back on ourselves. And in the very worst case is suicide, of course.
Yes.
It's self-destructive. I'd rather die than live with failure.
Yeah, which is very intense. And soul loss. Can you say a bit more about that? Soul loss, loss of balance?
Yeah, soul loss, it's a kind of dramatic term. It's a term that's used in shamanic healing. It just means that we've invested our heart and soul. So we're all familiar, whether we have any religious aspirations or not, we're all familiar with this expression, putting our heart and soul into things.
Yeah.
And we put so if you don't like the word soul, you can think about identity. We put part of our identity, our dreams, how we want our life to be. And this is part of the kind of overbalancing. So we're moving towards our goal here. And as we try harder and harder and become more focused, we can become more and more overbalanced. So it's very hard to get back. And we've put a bit of ourselves, we're become so fixated on the me, let's say, in a year's time when my goal's achieved, losing less of ourselves in the present moment. There's a loss of identity or loss of soul. And that's quite a serious situation, because if that goal disappears, we're leaning towards it and it disappears, we just fall completely flat. And so that can be an important part of the grieving process before we can launch into a new project, a new ambition. If definitely the old one is a write-off, then we have to go through this kind of grieving. And in grieving, there is the important learning of lessons, of course. move forward and try something else. But sometimes it's very tempting to bury ourselves in the next dream because we can't bear the pain of the dream that has just failed.
Yes.
And that's a key part of our emotional detox work. We're doing an emotional detox course, helping people in good company and with a bit of humour to work through that painful grieving of what has failed in their life. And that can be a relationship, can be somebody who actually has died, who was close to us, of course, and we were invested in that relationship very heavily.
I was actually just thinking that because I know of a few people where the problem was a divorce and an unexpected divorce. And so I felt at the time harder in some ways than a death, because a death is not by choice. And the person, there's a process and you know that person is gone. A divorce that was unexpected was so much harder to deal with. And what they had was an expectation of what the next 20 years could look like. So there was a whole path that they thought was there that suddenly was not there. And you often hear of people who go into other relationship very quickly. It's almost, I think they call it, isn't it, on the rebound. Because rather than be alone and face the pain, they immediately go into something and then they find that that's not right, which is understandable because they haven't really healed, they haven't done the work. And I can see why that would be very painful.
So we know that statistically second marriages are more likely to fail than first marriages.
Okay.
Still and so on. And I think you're reminding me of a particularly difficult situation that I've been through and that many people are going through, where they have elderly relatives with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia or other chronic diseases, which kind of gnaw away at our relationship with that person and our it's like a kind of a living gradual death. And people don't always engage with the grieving that's necessary there, and they're kind of waiting. Okay, when a person's died, I'll grieve. But actually, there are partial deaths. There are gradual deaths of people who have been very important to us in our life. And then some grieving is necessary along the way, actually.
Yeah, I can see. And as you say, a lot more of that these days.
Yeah, otherwise what's happening is we're carrying a lot of toxic emotions. So things like depression and anxiety and rage. Why is this happening? It seems so unfair.
You think some guilt as well, because they probably have unpleasant feelings, I suppose, not towards a person, but about the situation.
Yes, with some particular forms of illness or injury.
Yeah. Well, they don't look forward to visiting. I know, again, I've heard someone say that visiting is painful because the person they're visiting is not the same person that they actually know or knew.
Yes, the thing to avoid is the vicious cycles. As you say, you withdraw a little bit more and then you feel guilty, so you go less often. And, it can just become an escalating emotions. So clearing them along the way is, I would say, particularly important to health and well-being.
Okay. Well, that brings us on to a very important point, which is, how do we not fall down that hole? What can we do? What can everyone do? Because I think so much of living well is about taking personal responsibility and looking for ways that we can help ourselves. So what do you suggest?
First, step number one is to hear the wake-up call, because these situations creep up on us, or we can be so overdriven, so over-focused that we've reached the insensitivity stage. We've become kind of mindless in a way. So hearing the wake-up call, which can come in a variety of ways. It can come from feedback. If it's in the business world, feedback from our customers, they're just not buying us, or they're complaining a lot. So feedback from customers, from family and friends can be very important. We all need in our life people to keep an eye on us, frankly. And so some of us can become too independently fueled, and we all need a bit of independent monitoring. We need to gather around us some good relationships. And that includes coaches and healers, very helpful, giving us feedback, when we're kind of wandering off the track. Mentors as well, mentoring. Listening to the feedback that comes from the people around us. Also, things like sleep is a very important marker. Starting to have trouble sleeping. it was starting to go down the route of medications, relying on medications as props, or recreational drugs as well as props, or as escapism, really confronting what's going on. And usually it is very hard, of course, as we all know, to confront certain things, painful emotions, painful realities. And we all need sympathetic support, empathetic support, and support groups, So although I do one-to-one coaching, like yourself, we're both in the one-to-one coaching business, but we also run support groups and supportive courses where people help each other and encourage each other, and you don't feel alone in going through different feelings. And I mean, we do things like psychodramas, act out particular situations that people are in, and so having supportive people around to hold the space, you face things which can overwhelm you. The upset or the anger can be overwhelming, and so you need a supportive person or a supportive group of people to just hold that space so you can really let go. And that has been a problem. I spent a lot of years looking for the right kind of environment where people could do a lot of screaming and shouting, basic natural things which children have permission to do. Permission when life's getting too frustrating and everything's going wrong, and nobody cares and all this, and life's unfair, they can scream and yell and thrash about, and they quickly recover. We allow them to dissipate all that toxic energy. But for adults, it's a bit more difficult, So I spent some time hunting around and eventually developed a partnership with a local college where they provide us with a gym, which has all kinds of health and safety equipment, and it's isolated. We can scream and yell and not upset anybody. And everybody signs a confidentiality agreement, so that you don't worry that somebody's going to tell stories about you. Everybody's in the same boat. Everybody takes part, even the facilitators. Right. Because even if we kind of clear any kind of sense of failure and anguish about these three kind of things that happen in our life, even if we clear it once, but there's going to be more trouble in the future. It's just the nature of the game of life, isn't it? So from time to time, we do need to do these clear outs, really.
That's a good analogy, really, because it is, isn't it? We accumulate stuff and we clear out, and then lo and behold, we accumulate more stuff. So it's not a one-time thing. I think that if we learn the tools, we can apply them better the next time. So perhaps it's not so dramatic or intense, but different things will affect us. Probably wouldn't have the same thing affect us necessarily, but there can be many events that can knock us off balance. So yes, having the tools to do that. And when you said the gym, sorry, I just imagine people with the punching bag, because they recommend that as well, isn't it? It's literally to dissipate is such a good word, to get that inner turmoil, to get it out in a constructive way.
Yes. So in that course, the emotional detox course, we set up a number of psychodrama situations. One would be the particular punching. We provide people with weapons if they want to use weapons.
Do you want to clarify that? What weapons are we looking at here?
Weapons.
Let's just be sure.
Yes, we have to set up a range of situations because the range of toxic emotions that come around. And usually we're quite complex creatures. We rarely have one particular emotion. We kind of get a rainbow. We may be aware of one particular thing. We may be aware that we're very upset, for example, and we feel tearful. At the same time as feeling tearful, we can be quite angry and enraged. We focus on one and it doesn't give us relief because we're not dealing with the other. So we set up these different situations, and particularly hatred is one of the toxic emotions. It's a natural self-protective emotion to destroy the things that are threatening us or harming us in our life. We have this the most powerful corrosive emotion of all. And it's our ultimate self-protection, DNA thing. And that's a particularly difficult one for people to find outlets, because most people will shy away from it or disapprove it. So finding a place where your hatred can be accepted and you're given a chance to express it in these and it does need some destructive outlet. It's a destructive emotion. You can't just talk it. You can't talk it away. You can't shout it away. You need to bash. And so we allow. We also have situations where people actually destroy things which aren't going to matter really. And there is a tradition, of course, in the Greek culture. They have this tradition of smashing plates.
Yes.
And I've been at one of those sessions, and everybody had a wonderful. People arrived very haggard and miserable and stressed, and they smashed all these plates, and then they were smiling and beaming and energized again. It's very therapeutic. Sometimes we're trying to be too creative all the time, create and create and create. And there is a theory that we need to balance creativity and destructivity in our lives.
Okay.
A lot of the traditional destructive things like chopping wood or chopping down trees to create a clearing or thrashing the grain, the grain by hand. So our genes are mainly Stone Age, and we have the genes for a lot of, you could say, violent kind of activity, aggressive activity. And being in a nice civilized society and trying to be a nice person, this stuff can get triggered but then bottled up. And so having a situation where it can be released is very therapeutic, amazingly.
That actually brings to mind the fact that we are so much more sedentary now. So in days gone by, during the normal course of a working day, let's just say if it was within the home, there wouldn't have been all the labor-saving devices we have. So somebody who was in a bit of an emotional state could literally work it off just by going through and doing what they have to do. It wouldn't be an effort. But now we spend so much time sedentary that we have to make more of an effort to actually get out and do something.
Yes, and we have machines to do a lot of things, like washing machines. So we don't go down to the river and pound our clothes at the riverside anymore.
Exactly.
We've got the genes for all this. And our whole dynamics is structured on us having those kind of outlets.
And is that perhaps why we struggle more with these things these days, that the natural ways of dealing with it, also I think community would have been different. You would have naturally had a tighter community. People were not moving the distances that we moved. And so you would have had a tighter community supporting each other, and you would have been physically more active, so that that would also have been some events. You would have talked through them and you would have had 4 or 5 people there to support.
Yes, a lot of our potential, a lot of our problems, I should say, arise around entertainment. We're an entertainment culture in a way that the previous societies have never been. Our ancestors never had so much entertainment where you could kind of sit in a chair with a big bucket of popcorn, So their entertainment was always very community-based, as you say, social, and it was physical, dynamic, singing, dancing, the ways that people got through hard situations.
Yes.
And sitting in front of the TV with popcorn and fizzy drink, just
counterproductive, very counterproductive, because the ultimate self-soother now could be sitting through a box set and just they literally have a term, isn't it? It's binge watching for TV. So sit there for hours.
We have too many opportunities for distraction.
We do.
And for cravings and so on. So our inner emptiness. Let's just eat a lot of junk food.
Yeah. So the better way would be to come along and find one of your workshops. And what is coming up for you? What have you got on the cards?
Well, we have these emotional detox workshops. They take a lot of special facilities, as I've mentioned. So we only do them twice a year, March and November.
Right.
People can find information about these on my website, which is fullyalive.me.uk.
Okay. I will put a link below this. When we put the video up, then we'll put links for anyone who's wanting to find, just so they know for sure.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, these emotional detox workshops are the most powerful and transformative work that I do, but it is very sensitive work. So we can't allow spectators. We can't show people a video, because people are bringing out the stuff that's been bottled up, sometimes for decades. We have trauma experiences. But it's well worth giving a try. There's people aren't compelled to take part in anything. The exercises are all voluntary. but people who have done it, it's life-changing, and lots of physical symptoms disappear, and problems with sleep, and it's not because we're not just releasing toxic emotions, we're not just smashing and bashing. It's combined with a lot of self-esteem enhancement exercises, and with a lot of sharing. So finding out that we're not alone, struggling with the problems that human nature and the nature of the universe brings to us. So people get a lot from the sharing with each other, the open-hearted sharing. And in fact, people form great friendships from these workshops, and they form closer friendships. You get closer to people than you would in normal life, because we're all, we're all kind of wearing a mask, aren't we, a lot of the time?
All right, yes. And our social self, which we put on to go through life.
Exactly. So in these workshops, there is no, nobody's going to wrench your mask off, but there is an opportunity to let it off. And sometimes people need to attend, like the detox course, need to attend it more than once. And when I first, the reason I run that type of workshop is because it changed my life 25 years ago, when I was really in a big hole.
Okay.
And the first time I did it, I just couldn't let go enough, If you grew up in a family where you had to be kind of nice all the time, there's a lot of pressure, and you weren't allowed to be angry, perhaps, or express any of the less pleasant kind of emotion. Then we get used to being very tightly held and controlled, and you can't just do that at the drop of a hat. So we're very sympathetic to people who come along and they can't let go, or they're afraid to let go to begin with. And you can, just seeing other people do this is amazingly empowering. There's no pressure, but there's encouragement and support.
How many people would you expect to have within a workshop?
Well, we have a maximum of 12 for that particular workshop, because of on the second day we go in. The first day, it's not too intensive, and there's a lot of nice stuff. We bring in music, we bring in drumming as well, because we know that rhythm is very therapeutic at a very fundamental level. And some people who can't express their emotions through talking can express their emotions through banging a drum. And this is part of the self-esteem enhancement, finding that actually you've got a rhythm, and these are very simple drums that don't require any skill to play. And people can feel their own creativity in the group. So we do the drum jamming, and we've never had anybody who couldn't do it. And it's very natural. And it goes back to our time in the womb, with the heartbeat of the mother, the mother's respiration, and the deep sense of peace that we experience, and the simplicity of life then. Because for many of us, life has become overwhelmingly complex. And going back to just simple rhythmic drum work, and we do some of the traditional things that have kept the human race going for thousands of years. A little bit of singing and circle dance, just a little bit. Good range of varied activities, so that we can help people to get back to fundamentals, actually, strip off some of the baggage we've accumulated.
How many days is this how many days, and are they continuous days, or is this something that people would come to every week for so many weeks?
This is 2 Saturdays, and they're 1 week apart.
Right, okay. And would people have work to do in between those times?
Yeah, that's an important point, actually, that they keep a diary between the 2 days. They keep a diary, what I call an upsetting incidents diary. So you just record each day 1 or 2 things that kind of wound you up or deflated you. Some things will wind us up, things will deflate us. So people can pick 1 or 2 incidents in each day, and we'll actually use that material on the second day. So people can use particular issues that came up. In those incidents, little issues came up. Part of what we're doing on the second day is what we call desensitization to triggers. We all have our hot buttons, don't we? Little things that people say or do, or fail to say and do. We create a big reaction in us, really, because of our background. And so part of the work we're doing the second day is to desensitize those triggers, so that people can't push your buttons like they could. And when people aren't pushing your buttons anymore, they don't get the response. For one thing, they stop screwing around with us for their own entertainment. But also it frees us up for a more creative response.
Okay, good. Now, let's say that someone has been through the 2-day workshop. You mentioned that there's nothing then again until November. If they uncovered some issues that they felt inclined to want to do more with or about, could they do more? Is there different ways that they can work with you, or?
Yeah, sure. So there's always one-to-one coaching, of course, but also I run mindfulness courses, a particular form of mindfulness called dynamic mindfulness.
Okay.
When people think about mindfulness, they often think about chilling out, not being by things and so on. But dynamic mindfulness actually incorporates this making your dreams come true aspect of mindfulness. So mindful moving forwards, mindful clearing of blocks, and mindful transforming situations. And not just de-stressing comes into it, but it's not just about chilling. It's what I call chilling in rather than chilling out. So being happier and more relaxed in the real world rather than splitting off into a kind of an artificial world of listening to guided visualization tapes, things like that. I mean, there's an application for those. Again, they can become kind of addictive, and you're separating off from getting involved in the game of life and winning.
I think the mantra that I used to have, or it was the tagline when I had preschools, was play with a purpose. And I would say the same thing would be for my business now, which is that you have to have fun and you do have to have some daydreaming, but there has to be a purpose to it. So if you don't bring the two together, then there's, as you say, there's just too much time up in your head and there's just not enough time doing, and then that you just don't get the same results. So you don't get any results.
Yeah, sure. There is. I'm always mindful of a quotation from one of the ancient Gnostic Gospels. It's about 2,000 years old. It's from the Gospel of Thomas. And it's basically, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you don't bring forth what is within you, in other words, your potential, if you don't bring it forth, it will destroy you.
Yes, yeah.
All the time with people who have had setbacks in their life, they resignation, they quit, or they become a bit bitter and grumpy and all this.
And yes, at the end of days, then there's the big regret, because they do say that you won't regret what you did that didn't work. You will regret what you never tried, because of course then you'll never know.
Yes. So one of the things we do with our dreams and ambitions is to keep procrastinating. No, someday I'm going to write that book.
Indeed.
And it's really important. I sometimes have to remind my clients that, your time here is limited.
Yes.
You're not going to be here forever.
Yeah.
Get on with those things. We don't want to die with regrets.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, so when you just mentioned again, if somebody is interested in the workshops, I also know that you've got a meetup group. So if somebody could find you on Meetup as well, if they're looking for you. So the meetup group is called?
The meetup group is called Cambridge Healing and Holistic Lifestyle Group.
Okay, and your website again is?
The website is Fully Alive, which is one word, .me.uk.
All right, lovely. Okay.
I have a couple of Facebook pages as well, but people can get in touch with me via the website, and I can send lots of resources and links. Provide the indicate, where they want to go, or stuckness, experiencing. I help people wherever I can, and don't have to become clients immediately if they don't wish to.
No, as I was going to say, there's plenty of ways that they can actually get to know you and meet other people and make a decision whenever. But okay, that's really interesting. Thank you very much. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wind it up?
No, just some encouragement to people. Never give up on your dreams, and don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So if things go wrong, just remember that underneath all the failure and disappointment was your own natural, healthy drive for potential and for enjoying life, and that is kind of sacred, really.
It is, and everybody has the potential to stretch and grow. It's not always easy. I mean, I think that's another thing in today's, especially online, the easy button, the magic bullet. There's a lot of push for that, and it isn't easy. And I think that's where the expectations perhaps are unrealistic, and why people give up too quickly, because they assume if it's hard for them, it's because they are not suited to it, and it must be their problem. When actually it was hard for everybody. It's just that somebody else gave the wrong directions, as it were, and expected it to be easy, and that's not the case.
Yeah, so I would say if your dream comes unstuck, don't give up on dreaming.
Exactly. Pivot. Oh, there's another lovely one, which is to be the bow that bends. So thank you very much, Michael, and good luck with the workshop. We'll speak again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, take care.